Have you ever wondered what it actually takes to build a fortress that no enemy can ever tear down? You need three things: a dedicated team, a flawless blueprint, and an impenetrable defense. 2,000 years ago, the Apostle Paul took on a monumental construction project of his own. He wasn't laying physical stones. He was coordinating a massive global network of early churches, completely without the help of modern technology. The deep irony of this massive effort is where Paul was actually sitting while he directed it. He was attempting to build this vast, liberating spiritual network while physically chained under house arrest in Rome. You might expect a prisoner to write letters filled with despair. Instead, Paul's foundational mindset for this entire project was simple: in everything, give thanks. He knew that gratitude, even in chains, was the mortar holding his team together. He recognized early on that if you want to build an unbreakable spiritual fortress against the constant distractions of the world, there is only one way to do it. You have to stay intensely connected to Jesus and to each other. This map traces the sheer physical scale of Paul's mission. Historians estimate his travels covered roughly 13,400 miles. That is half the circumference of the Earth, mostly traversed on foot and by wooden sailing ships. Because he couldn't fire off an email to these distant congregations, Paul relied entirely on a network of trusted personal couriers. Men like Tychicus and Onesimus carried his letters across the empire. Tychicus was a faithful minister from Asia, and Onesimus was a newly converted believer Paul met in Rome. These personal emissaries were crucial. A piece of parchment can transfer information, but a friend arriving at your door brings physical comfort and emotional support. They maintain the vital human ties that keep a scattered community alive. The team Paul assembled was remarkably diverse. He had Jewish believers like Aristarchus working side by side with Gentile believers like Luke. Aristarchus was a fellow prisoner of Paul's, and Luke was a loyal physician. They labored together despite deep historical and cultural animosities between their backgrounds. True church unity rarely comes from natural compatibility. To forge an alliance strong enough to withstand severe persecution, these early builders had to drop their deep-seated cultural arguments and focus entirely on Christ. This team effort extended far beyond the coastal trade hubs. For the inland cities that Paul couldn't visit himself, like Colossae, he relied on spiritual architects like Epaphras. Epaphras was a local church leader, instrumental in spreading the gospel to those remote towns. When Paul writes to the Colossians, he mentions how Epaphras is constantly praying for them. His prayer has a very specific focus: that his friends would stand perfect and complete in all the will of God. This diagram illustrates what that means in practice. Perfect in this context does not mean you never make a mistake or that you have flawless behavior. Instead, it describes a character that finds its ultimate expression in sacrificial love for others. And complete means being fully grown in your faith. It describes an absolute trust that God will actually do what he promised to do, even when it seems humanly impossible. Epaphras provided the exact spiritual blueprint needed to build a resilient, unshakable faith in a world full of conflicting philosophies. But a fortress is only as strong as the people guarding its gates. Later in Paul's life, we see a stark contrast between two of those key co-workers: Luke, who stayed loyal to the end, and Demas, who illustrates the severe danger of a compromised defense. Demas didn't abandon the mission because he lost a theological argument. He left because he simply fell in love with the flashy, immediate rewards of the surrounding world. This shift in affection represents a total surrender of his post. That distraction is the exact same danger that threatened the nearby church in Laodicea. Laodicea was a wealthy city in the region that received a severe historical warning. The believers there were encouraged to fit in, keep their comfortable lives, and worship just like the culture around them. Jesus' prescription for the Laodiceans was direct. They needed to actively repent of those bad choices, and then intentionally open the doors of their hearts to let him take control again. A fortress cannot stand if the guards are slowly lured away from their posts. We have to actively guard our own gates against the slow, shiny distractions of the world. This brings us to a profound reality. The human soul itself is a fortress, and it is situated right in the middle of a world that has actively revolted against its king. These stories of loyalty and desertion illustrate a difficult reality. Every life eventually aligns with one side or the other. Just as Demas was pulled toward the world and Luke toward Christ, our internal territory is constantly being claimed by one of two opposing powers. You don't actually have to deliberately sign up for the kingdom of darkness to lose the battle. Simply neglecting to ally yourself with Christ leaves the gates unattended, inviting the enemy to move in and take possession. The only defense against this kind of hostile takeover is a vital, moment-by-moment connection with God. You have to yield the fortress entirely to His control, letting Him hold it from the inside out. Take a moment to evaluate your own defenses today. Ask yourself honestly, what choices are you making right now that reveal who truly occupies the center of your life?